Hello and welcome back. Today we'll be finishing up our 40K Space Marine. Now this will be the final part in this series, and we're going to get to the battle ready stage, which just includes having your main primary colors, maybe a wash or two, and a base. Now for something like this, which is going to be the main component of your army, assuming you're playing Space Marines, you don't want to get too fancy if you're doing multiple squads, right? It's going to be too time consuming. And if all you want to do is get your units on the board, you want something quick and effective, right? So we're going to go ahead and use my personal favorite for Space Marines at least, Technical Sterling Mud. This is a much thicker paint than what we've been using, and it's meant for basing. It kind of gives, as the name implies, a good mud effect. Even with dry brushing, you can get kind of a good dirt, kind of dusty effect. Now again, we don't want too much paint on our brush at a time, and we are going to go ahead and just kind of liberally apply this all over the base here. You don't want to worry about getting over the edge. You can go back and cover that up with Abaddon Black afterwards, and there's a very neat trick that you can do with that. But for right now, we just want to get solid, smooth coverage all the way around. And we'll even let this dry a little bit, and go back over it multiple times so we kind of get a nice layered, kind of chunky feeling to it. Again, technical paint is a lot thicker than what we've been using, so it's going to look rough and it's going to look like you have too much paint. If you aren't using enough water, you've probably seen this on your model already, but hopefully, if you've been thinning your paints, you won't have that problem. So now that this is starting to dry up a little bit, we're going to go ahead and get some more on our brush here. And now that we've got a solid first layer, we can really just start slopping this on here. Now you gotta imagine, a big puddle of mud. It's not even, it's not uniform. You want highs and lows. So if you're getting splotches where there's much more paint than the area around it, that's kind of more of a natural feeling, and that's what you really want, at least in my opinion. It's what I aim for, it's what I like to do. And again, this is really quick and effective. And if you just want battle ready, that's perfect. You can do all of your Marines like this in a very short time span. That took us, maybe 30 seconds per layer. Really quick, really effective. And once we're finished and this is dried, we can go around that rim. And you don't have to, but it makes your model look a little bit nicer. And we'll take Abaddon Black and we'll do our trick that we did originally with the pauldrons there. And we'll just kind of use the back of our brush, the side of our brush even, with Abaddon Black just to finish off the rim there and give it a nice uniform, kind of neat look. And while we're waiting on that to dry, we're going to talk about the other little details that I've either kind of skipped over or forgotten about. Let's see if I can't find my Abaddon Black. Here we are. That's the pain of having a desk full of paint just right out of view, where thankfully you can't see the mess that is my desk. There is too much paint to find what I'm looking for, more often than not. So we're going to go ahead and get a little bit of Abaddon Black. And you want it thinned down, especially with darker paints. The darker the paint, the less you need on your brush, and the more water you can kind of get on there. And we're going to go in, and you don't have to do this, but it does make your finished product look a lot nicer, a lot more detailed. We'll go in to the recesses here, kind of where the armor is, I wouldn't say jointed, but where it splits apart here, and you can tell there's kind of a undersuit underneath. We're going to go ahead and apply our black in all of those little recesses. And the nice thing about the black being thinned down is that if you you can see there I spilled over a little bit. Once that dries, it's going to be hardly noticeable. And even now you can see it's blending right into that green. And we might even do a second layer of this, again, really thin down. And if we come around to the front, you can see it's very small, but there is these same little spots here. And I think I always miss these. There's always one or two that I miss at the end of this. But I think that's about all of them. And actually, while we're here, we might as well clean up our bolter. Now, off camera, I did do a lot of fixing mistakes. I did finish the pauldron, and I went and cleaned up the leg here. It's still not perfect, as you can clearly tell, but, you know, from 2-3 feet away, if this is sitting on the tabletop and you're playing a game, you're really not going to be able to notice it. Even, you know, I'm only a foot or two back. It's very hard to see, you know, where I've kind of made mistakes with too much bronze. But if you still have little areas like that and you want to spend the time to go back and cover them up, it's very easy. Just get a quick layer of Caliban green if you're doing Dark Angels or whatever paint you're using, and just a real thin down. You can cover it up very easily, very quickly. So with that, I believe there's only one more tiny detail we need to focus on, and that's going to be the hardest part, in my opinion, which is the eyes. Now, I like to do my Dark Angels with red eyes, my Ultramarines the same way. I think I'd say most of the Legions I would preferably do red eyes with. Some of them you might want to do like a neon green that kind of meshes with the armor a little bit more, helps, you know, make it pop. But for you know, color theory's sake, we're going to do classic Christmas colors, red and green, right? So we don't want too much paint in our brush. You got to be very careful about that, otherwise you're going to end up messing it up. And I'm sure I'll manage to do it anyway. See if we can focus here. There we go. Oh, hands, please don't shake too much on me now. And we are just going to, as neatly as we can, fill in the eyes here. Now, the nice thing about having your paint thinned enough that you have to kind of go back and do 2 layers is that if any gets on the rim of the eye sockets there, it kind of helps with a like glowing effect almost. And especially if you go in and dry brush very lightly afterwards with another shade of red, you can kind of make it look like the eyelids themselves are glowing, right? So being messy there, you can kind of use it to your advantage. And actually, I don't think we did too horribly, right? That looks pretty decent. And that's kind of a first for me. I always end up ruining the eyes and having to go back and doing many thin layers to hide the fact that I ruined them. And now that our technical paint there, Sterling Mud, has dried on the bottom, we're going to come back, and again, we're using my favorite little beat up brush here, and it's probably the largest size brush I'd ever use on something of this scale. We're going to go ahead and get some more Abaddon Black, and we're actually going to take our model off the paint handle here just to make this easier. And using the, you can call it the side, you can call it the back, the edge, whatever, where that curve is along the back of the brush, we're just going to run that along the base, and hopefully this doesn't work perfectly every time. I will give you that disclaimer. Sometimes you can go up over the rim on accident, but hopefully we can avoid that. And we are just going to cover up all that mess we made with that Sterling Mud. Now we might have to do 2 layers. Maybe one will look good enough once it dries. I'm not sure yet, and I'm starting to go over the edge. The paint handle is great if you have more of a shaky grip, which unfortunately I do. And another trick that I haven't mentioned yet, and I probably should have, in the first part, especially if you're someone who shakes a lot like I do, thanks caffeine addiction, is when you're painting, kind of keep your hands pressed together. You want some contact there. Not only it helps with your steadiness, but also it keeps your brush from kind of wandering with your brush strokes. So it helps with your accuracy, and it helps, keeping yourself from shaking too much. And you can see as this dries, I might do another quick layer, but overall, especially in this one little spot here, it's looking much nicer, right? And that is about as perfect as we can ask for. Going back over and fixing your mistakes will take your model from looking decent to looking wonderful. A lot of my models that I start with, that I'll get halfway through, I end up thinking look terrible for a hot minute. Even if I'm, painting everything perfectly and I'm not, spilling anything anywhere, there's still always kind of a aspect of, how to phrase this. There's always kind of areas that, once they're cleaned up, look much better. Whether your layer was too thin and you kind of need to pass back over it to get a nice shade, or a nice solid, single base color. And here we're just going back into those recesses again, just to kind of get a nice finished black in there. Again, keep your paint thin when you're doing small little recesses like these, and your paint will actually, even if it spills out a little bit, it'll kind of just find its way into the cracks. And you'll notice this a lot, especially when we use a wash here in a minute. Paint naturally kind of goes towards all the recesses, and you can use that in your favor very considerably, especially using darker colors, and that's what we want here. And again, we'll just fix our little mistakes on the bolter here. And looking at it, I'd say we're just about finished, right? Pretty solid. I haven't missed, hopefully, too much. Doesn't look like it. And something else I didn't mention when I applied the technical paint there at the bottom is, don't worry about getting paint on the model itself. If you want to only cover the base, maybe you want him to look like he was just walked onto the area, that's fine. But I kind of want my guy to look like he's been trudging through mud a bit. So, getting up onto his legs gives it kind of more of a feeling like he's been marching, right? He's been fighting. He's, dirty, grimy. And that's where our next layer is going to help really sell that feeling. This is where our wash comes in. Some people call it liquid talent. I kind of agree. You can cover a lot of mistakes with non-oil. And that's kind of what we're going to use it for here. But our main thing that we want is to kind of bring out the highlights, kind of bring out, we'll get some more off of our brush here. We don't want too much, otherwise it's going to end up looking splotchy. It'll kind of bring out the griminess of the model, and you just kind of want to, aim for the recesses here. You don't want too much pooling on the larger flat surfaces. Otherwise, it's going to look kind of rough. And sometimes you can kind of work it to a desired effect. But I think for what we want here, just a nice solid coverage. Let it kind of push it into the recesses, right? And especially on more metallic parts, it'll find its way into the little cracks and crevices there, and really give you more of like a greasy, dirty feeling. And that's really effective. And actually, with that being said, I think we're just about finished. Looking at it, I'm not seeing too much missed parts. I'm not seeing too many mistakes that we've done here that, look too noticeable. I'm gonna go ahead and say that's a finished battle ready model, especially if that's sitting on the table, 2-3 feet away from you. You're at head height. I'm gonna say that's done. And with that, if you guys want to see any specific models in the future, whether you want to see specific paint jobs, schemes, whatever, leave me a comment. Let me know. If you like this video, like and subscribe. I'll leave, links to my other playlists once we get there down below in the description. You can check out, some of the other stuff that I want to do in the future. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and call it and say, thank you for watching and have a good day.